Worst foods that feed cancer cells. People, what up? What's good, man? It's your boy TwoCentz. As y'all can see, man, we got some learning to do today. Y'all know I like to mix in the education with the foolishness. We got a video from Leonid Kim, MD, man, licensed doctor in the U.S., right? Certified, verified. Y'all, let's learn what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat. Y'all like, comment, subscribe. Let's get it.
40% of us will be diagnosed with cancer at some point in our lifetime, and so much of it is just bad genetics and bad luck. But here's the good news. Up to 40% of all cancers are preventable. So on one hand, you can't change your genetics.
Right.
But on the other hand, you can absolutely influence how your genes behave. And
yeah, I mean, in this, obviously he knows way more. He's an expert on the topic, and I'm not. But I mean, it's simple, right? Like, smoking causes lung cancer, so you can prevent lung cancer by not smoking. You know what I'm saying? Like you can like there's lifestyle changes and things that you can do to prevent yourself from catching disease and that sort of thing, right? We know this, so I'm following you, Doc.
one of the most powerful ways to influence your genes and lower your risk of cancer is through the food you eat every day. Because many cancers are not just a genetic disease, it's a metabolic disease, and it's an immune function disease. And the wrong foods, even the ones that we consider normal or healthy, they can quietly foster the exact conditions that cancer needs to grow and proliferate. So in this video, I want to break down the science behind how certain foods feed cancer cells, and I'm going to give you a simple framework to how to avoid them. I'm Dr. Leonid Kim. I'm board certified in internal and obesity medicine. And on this channel, I go over the most up-to-date and evidence-based information on the topics of weight loss, metabolic health, and longevity. Let's get into it. So let's set the foundation. Cancer starts when a normal cell becomes abnormal. Just a single mutation, which happens all the time. And if this mutation goes unrepaired or unchecked, in some cases, it can lead to uncontrolled growth of cells. But for that mutated cell to survive...
And also, you guys, and I know this video is about like foods, but stress is also a pretty big factor. Like, do your research on like your body's sympathetic state versus its parasympathetic state, man. And you gonna learn a lot of valuable information, man. Like, don't like learn what stresses you out and learn how to deal with that as well. But let's get back into the food, right?
Spread, you need several things to fall into place. So first, cancer cells need glucose as a primary energy source. And then it needs hormones to grow. So it would be things like insulin and IGF-1, which are basically signals that activate growth pathways. And then cancer cells require inflammation, which is what breaks down barriers. And that inflammation is what suppresses our immune system. And our immune system is our first line of defense against cancers. And then finally, cancers need a blood supply, which they get through a process called angiogenesis. And that is what provides these cancer cells new blood vessels, almost like a lifeline, to feed it nutrients needed for growth. And unfortunately, many foods in our modern diet directly support every one of those steps. But the good news is we can use this to our advantage, and we can use our food to either feed cancers or we can fight it. So we have to start with one of the most potent naturally occurring carcinogens ever known, and that is aflatoxins, which is a toxin produced by certain molds that we usually encounter on certain grains or nuts or corn. And the foods that we really want to be careful with are peanuts and tree nuts like almonds or walnuts or pistachios. Now I want to be clear.
Damn, y'all. And he about to clarify, but man, I feel like by the end of this video, I'm not gonna want to eat anything, bro. And obviously, I mean, you got to do your research as well, as far as like, you eating one thing might affect you differently than somebody else. Like me eating cheese might have a way worse impact on my body than you eating cheese because I'm lactose intolerant, and this, that, and the third. You might be white, I'm black, this height, right? Like, and I'm my height, but it's just funny, man. I feel like, bro, I'm not gonna want nothing to eat by the time we done with this. But this is a great video right here, man.
We do not want to avoid these foods. There's nothing wrong with nuts, but we have to be careful to avoid buying these nuts or grains from humid and warm countries where they could be prone to mold contamination. And we also have to be careful with the indirect or downstream exposure that we can get from things like peanut butter or almond butter, where they could be produced from nuts that didn't have as thorough an inspection for mold. So to minimize this carcinogen, you gotta look for brands that don't get their nuts from humid places. And if you eat nuts, then I would inspect them carefully and avoid eating the ones that are discolored or shriveled, as that could potentially point to a mold contamination. And then try to eat nuts within a month of purchasing them from the store and watch out for their shelf life expiration dates. And another thing that's helpful is roasting peanuts and pistachios, which can reduce the amount of aflatoxin content, but it doesn't eliminate it completely. And by the way, another sneaky way aflatoxins can make it into our food is indirectly through milk and dairy products. So some animals consume aflatoxin-contained feed like corn, and there's a special aflatoxin called M1, which lives on animal feed, and then it can get secreted in milk. So we have to be careful, especially if you get milks from cows that are fed untested grain, or if you get unregulated raw milk or dairy products. Okay, next up, no surprise.
You know, and I should probably research as well, you guys. Cause like I told you, like I literally just told y'all, like I'm lactose intolerant, so I try to stay away from dairy as much as possible. Like it literally, like gives me gas, like breaks my face out, all sorts of things. But I haven't done the research on like all the nutrients that I'm missing out from like skipping out on dairy products, even though like me eating them, I can't have them. Like, and so that's also another thing I want to say is, bro, like even though you might gotta avoid some stuff. And obviously, you know what I'm saying, Dr. Kim, man, he did all the research. He went to school to become a doctor. Like you still at the same time, man, you still gotta research stuff for you individually as well, right? To see like what you can have and what you can't have, and like do your own, like go to the doctor, get your certain tests done, man, and like do research for yourself to see, you know what I'm saying? Like how your body responds to certain foods as well. I'm liking this, man. Stay away from the aflatoxins. What we got up next?
It's here, but foods that are high in sugar
Carbs,
or processed
makes
carbohydrates.
sense. And you know, and I can't speak on this, y'all. I've been studying, like, cause if y'all don't know, man, I'm actually a certified personal trainer. I'm not a nutritionist or anything, but like you know what I'm saying. I like to do research on like, you know, like diabetes, like, you know what I'm saying, like heart disease and that sort of thing. But you know, we especially in America, bro, we eat way too much carbs, you know, and like, you know, you get to the point where your body you develops an insulin resistance, and that's how you get like your type 2 diabetes and stuff. And that's not even cancer, but you know what I'm saying, you gotta you know, you really, just a quick Google search, man, or just like 10 minutes of like, you know, just researching like what is carbs, how does sugar affect my body. Like, y'all really, I really want to advocate for, you know what I'm saying, tapping in with like learning these type of things, just so you can have a better understanding of what's going on. I know we like to joke around on this channel a lot, you know, and I don't really know who's gonna see this video, but y'all do that research, man. But let's get back to, you know what I'm saying, the cancer talk. Ooh.
Are also linked to increased cancer risk, especially when it comes to breast cancer and colon cancer and possibly pancreatic cancer. And that is because cancer cells love sugar. So to help you visualize this, imagine your body's made out of trillions of tiny engines, which are your cells. And normally these engines burn fuel very efficiently. They use oxygen and they get a lot of energy from each bite of food that you eat. But cancer cells, well, they're different. They're more like broken engines that do not work efficiently, so they burn through a ton of fuel really fast, and their favorite fuel is sugar, or more precisely, it's glucose, which is the type of sugar that your body makes from food like breads and pastas and candy and soda. And that's in part explained by the Warburg effect, which is a process called aerobic glycolysis, where cancer cells choose to burn sugar super quickly, even when there's plenty of oxygen around. And cancer does not care about efficiency. They just want to grow fast. So when you eat foods that spike your blood sugar, your body releases hormones like insulin
exactly.
and IGF-1, which is normally a good thing. But if it's done in excess, then these hormones actually send a message to the cells saying, hey, it's time to grow bigger and divide. So now you get a double whammy. You're feeding your body a food that is preferred by cancer cells. And then the sugar you're eating is increasing the signals in your body that tells cancer cells to grow and divide faster. faster. And we especially see this in breast cancer, where some studies show that cancerous cells can have 6 times more insulin receptors than healthy cells. And if that wasn't bad enough, that excess sugar leads to chronic inflammation, which can further lead to even more DNA damage, which then in turn makes it even easier for cancers to appear. And then this inflammation also weakens your immune system, which we often think about in terms of fighting infections, but our immune system is actually our first line of defense against cancers. So bottom line is, cancer cells are very sugar hungry, which we can actually use to our advantage. We can choose the foods that will stop feeding cancer, and instead we can prioritize foods that feed the rest of our body while starving cancer cells. So it's best to limit sugar as much as you can, with the worst offenders being processed or high glycemic carbohydrates. And instead, we need to emphasize low glycemic carbohydrates that have high fiber, so things like beans and whole grains and vegetables and berries.
I hate these too. I could roll with some vegetables and berries. I can't stand eating beans, bro. I hate beans, man. I got bean trauma from being forced to sit at the dinner table as a kid, man. Boy, you better finish. Boy, you better finish them black eyed peas, boy. I gotta tap in with the beans. No.
And I always talk about this, but if you drink regular soda, that's just low-hanging fruit that can be switched today to things like tea or water or even diet soda. And by the way, there's a lot of controversy about diet drinks and sweeteners in general and their association with cancer. But that's a very nuanced topic, and I'm actually going to go deeper on that in one of my future videos. Now, another food that we have to be careful with is processed meat and red meat. But we have to approach this topic a little carefully because the science on this is not as black and white as the headlines make it seem. So to start,
before we get into the meat, y'all, but yeah, man, I mean, obviously, stay away from the sugar for cancer. Stay away from it for diabetes too. I don't know if we'll do a video on diabetes, man, but if not, do your research as well, bro. I'm really hope y'all walk away from this video with that, man.
There's tons of studies and meta-analyses that showed an association between high intake of processed meat, like ham and bacon and sausages and hot dogs, or high intake of red meat, so things like pork or beef or lamb, and how they could be causing cancers, especially colorectal cancer. But the important thing here is these are observational studies that show association, but we don't know if there's causation. Because in a lot of these studies, research look at what people ate and track which groups of people develop cancer. And what they notice is the people who ate more processed meat or red meat were more likely to get cancers in the colon. Wow. But it's hard to tease out if those people also smoked more or exercised less. Or on the flip side, did the people that ate less processed meats, were they more likely to have access to fresh food? Or did they have access to better healthcare? Which is what we call the healthy user bias.
Right. And what I will say, bro, is, you know, the lunch meat, man, like these ham slices or whatever, they're also putting sugar in that. So there's that too, man. That's crazy, bro. You got sugar in your lunch meat, man. That's nuts.
Often have to account for in these studies, where maybe it wasn't the consumption of meat itself, but maybe it's the other behaviors that could possibly explain the reduced cancer prevalence in those populations. So the way I think about it is there's definitely mechanistic reasons for why red meat or processed meat may cause cancer, because many processed meats have nitrites, which are preservative used to cure and flavor meats. And once nitrites get into your stomach, the acidity in your stomach turns them into nitrosamines, specifically N-nitrosodimethylamines, or NDMA, which is a known carcinogen, and it could increase the risk of cancer, specifically stomach cancer. On top of that, how we cook meats also matters, because when meat is grilled or fried or barbecued at high temperatures, this process can create chemicals called heterocyclic amines, or HCAs, or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs. And both of these compounds have been shown to damage DNA and promote cancer cells in animal studies. So how do we put it all together? Well, the studies are all over the place, but the correlation between processed and red meat is definitely there. But looking at the totality of evidence, which is not perfect, I'm not entirely convinced it's the red meat itself that causes cancer, but it's probably the absence of food that the extra red meat replaces is what causes the problem. So when you eat more red meat or processed meat, by default, you're probably eating less of something else, and you're probably eating less fiber-rich foods, so things like fruits and vegetables and beans and whole grains. And we have numerous studies and meta-analyses that show that people with a higher dietary fiber intake had a lower risk of several cancers and had a 13% reduction of cancer mortality.
That's pretty sick, man. So that like one saying a apple a day keeps the doctor away. Like that's literally, you know, it's not just a saying, it's not just a joke, right? So shout outs to that.
So I don't think you need to give up red meat or grill meat, but I
Just
would
add more
probably wouldn't
fiber.
overdo it. And I would definitely try to load up on fiber with
Right.
every meal. Next, there's pretty strong scientific evidence
Alcohol.
that alcohol causes cancer. And the International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified alcohol as a
Wow.
group 1 carcinogen all the way back in 1987 due to
It's nuts, bro. And it's so, you know, it destroys your brain. Like it ruins your relationships, man. It makes you smell bad. It gives you cancer too, apparently, bro. Alcohol and you know it's everywhere, man. There's bars everywhere, clubs everywhere, man. You know, we promote it so much, we talk about it so much, and it's terrible for us, right? It's crazy, man.
sufficient evidence that it causes cancer of the oral cavity and the pharynx and the esophagus and your liver. And there's also association with breast cancer in women and colorectal cancer. And alcohol can lead to cancer in several ways. First, it's metabolizing your liver to
Damages
acetaldehyde, which is a
everything.
toxic compound that directly damages DNA. And then it interferes with DNA repair. And then alcohol also causes vitamin deficiencies. So you get lower levels of vitamin B1 or thiamine, which is absolutely critical for healthy mitochondrial function and energy metabolism. And alcohol can also impair your body's ability to absorb folate. And a folate deficiency can lead to further DNA synthesis errors. And on top of all that, alcohol also acts as a solvent, which actually enhances the absorption of other carcinogens like tobacco or NDMA into your tissues. All right, so this is not a comprehensive list of all the foods that cause cancer, but if there's one that I didn't mention, let me know in the comments below and I'll make sure to talk about that in my future video.
So we gotta stay away from hold on, let's go back to that chart before we get up out of here, man. Make sure y'all see this one more time, man. Right, shout outs to Doc for this great video as well, y'all. Well, I don't want to spend too much time, but we need more fruits, vegetables, beans, and grains, he said. I gotta tap in with the beans. Hope y'all enjoyed, man. Shout outs to Leonard Kim, man. As always, it's your boy 2Centz. Say it with me, TCZ. We out.